quaint farming village lay cradled among the pastoral hills. The farmers, guardians of tradition, tended to their land with tender care. And as the sun set each day, the people laughed and celebrated their deep bond to their land. Until one day a shadow loomed, and the rustic charm was broken by the commercial farm that moved in next doors, and with it brought cheap labor, thunderous machines, and an ability to undercut any of the prices offered by the idyllic village. And so the farmers were unable to compete, and they had to face the heartbreaking reality of unemployment and relocation. Few stayed, and fewer were able to maintain a dignified quality of life. Salvador was amongst those who stayed. He loved the land too much not to do so. He saw the wreck that his hometown was turning into, but he decided not to blame his neighbors for their ignorance, because he decided not to punish himself by delving in anger. Instead, he focused on what he loved and what he could control. He kept believing, and he told himself somehow all of this had to have a purpose. And so he worked, and he found out, what is it that makes the soil flourish? What is it that creates better plants? He became a master in hybrid plant breeding. He always selected the very best of seeds. He became a master in soil revitalization. He went so far as to study what kind of sounds, what kind of vibrations emitted by the land created the best kind of crops that you could cross together. And slowly but surely, his plants became the very best. For such exquisite produce, demand was slowly but surely found. In fact, so much so that soon Salvo needed to hire more helping hands. And the people who worked for him, they weren't just working, they were inspired by him. In fact, one of his workers learned how to make delightful jams that he then went ahead and distributed from the local produce. Another learned how to make fresh homemade cheeses. Another one started to record the sounds of the birds singing on the land and sold that with packages of seeds at a premium to other farms around the country. And there was another one, in fact, who was making movies about the farm and distributing those. And slowly this revival started to take place as people started coming back to the land, not just for economic reasons, but for cultural reasons, because it had heart. And they started opening bed and breakfasts again. And they started serving these fresh jams and serving these fresh homemade cheeses. And the spirit of renewal was coming in, was seeping in, so much so that the town became a cultural heirloom. And all of this momentum was created thanks to one man that understood that after the momentum of destruction wears itself out, what had to happen was a renewal. What had to happen was the opposite energies, the strengthening of the old energies coming back in. And he understood that fear was not the answer. Resistance was not the answer, because resistance would only keep holding up the pendulum where it was at the moment. He understood that judgment was not the answer, and he simply had to let that momentum go and focus his attention on things that he loved, on things that he could control, and this way avoid prolonging the undesirable, allowing the desirable to enter. Now, what would have happened had Salvo reacted negatively to being undercut by the commercial farm next doors? What if he grew fearful? What if he grew resentful? In fact, what if he decided to avenge himself and to do something to the farm next doors? What if he decided to take matter into his own hands? Would that have worked out as well, him incriminating himself? Or maybe he would have chosen a different path. Maybe he would have said, this is not lucrative enough. I'm not getting a profit from this, so I'm going to abandon myself. I'm going to betray the things that truly make me happy, truly make me present in the moment. Not just as a job, as a hobby. I'm going to get away from the land altogether, and I'm going to chase money, and I'm going to chase power wherever it's offered to me, and never tending to my emotional state in the moment and the truth of what makes me happy and the truth of what I am. then none of these blessings would have come in. But he understood that he wasn't a mistake. He understood that what he loved had a purpose, and it wasn't a mistake. He understood that the situation had a purpose, and that the way to deal with the situation wasn't violence, it was action, because freedom is the ability to act. But it wasn't violence, not internally, not emotionally, and not externally either. Now let us examine a more modern scenario. Let us examine a scenario where the stock market right now takes a deep dive. And as the real economy tends to follow the stock market, you know that the real economy is about to do the same. And you're a little bit worried about being employed. You are gainfully employed, you're lucratively employed, you like what you're doing. And in fact, you would go so far as to say you have savings every month, you have a good safety net, a little safety egg. But at the same time, you really don't want anything to happen. So you have one of two options, right? You can start giving into panic, and you can say, this is all going to go wrong, I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to burn through my savings, I'll be back to point zero, and I'm not even sure if after that I will be able to find as good of a job in the future. As a result of that, all of the other areas of my life are going to be negatively affected, because our minds do tend to wonder. Or you can feed the positive dragon, you can feed the one that says, let us look at this statistically and historically, and there's a 90% plus probability that even if the real economy ends up taking a hit, like it probably will, I will still stay gainfully employed. I'm still going to be okay, and more likely than not, I will not need to tap into my savings. And there are hidden advantages. Look at the stock market. Right now, it's half the price that it used to be, and you know what I have? I have savings. And I can go ahead and invest half of those savings right now and see if it goes lower, I'll invest the remainder of the savings, and then I will be able not to only stay gainfully employed, but to grow my fortune, a fortune that in the future I can invest to create an enterprise of my own, to put a down payment on a house of my own, because it's time, and because the people who don't take risks are people who don't drink the champagne, and because in life, you have to be ready for change. It's good to make plans, but life is a process, and you have to be adaptable, and you have to allow yourself the room to make mistakes without judgment, because when all is said and done, this is a journey. It's for living it, not for living with regrets later or dying with regrets. It's for living it. And at the end of the day, it's better to be absolutely ridiculous than absolutely boring. It's very important to remember that you live in a dense reality. You live in a dense reality that's governed by past time lag, by momentum, by the amount of energy that it takes to focus a thing into being, to focus an event into fact. But you are the creator. You have to take the responsibility, because as within you, so without. Life is a mirror, life is a hologram, and life is a reflection. And you have to remember that your creation, it doesn't start with your action. Your creation starts with your emotional state, with your mental and your emotional state. Your emotional state is a creation. It's your embodiment of a creation, and you have to, at every moment in time, be aware of that and take responsibility for the kind of creation that you're bringing about right now with the emotional state that you're allowing yourself right now. You have to remember that life is a process, and this can be a good thing. You don't have to fear the process. You don't have to say anything that I attain can be taken away from me. You have to say, I am the master. This is the proof that I am the creator, that I can shift, that I can mold, that I can change, that I can create different worlds and different realities. And seeing life as a process, you take a different perspective and a higher perspective. In fact, right now, I want us to do a little exercise. I want you guys to take pieces of paper and pens that I put out for you, and I want you to write down anonymously, of course, some of the challenges that you are facing right now in your lives, and phrase it as you will, and we will examine them not as challenges, but as processes. And we will examine you as the emotional states that you embody. So let's give it a go.
Buongiorno Italia, gli spaghetti al dente, è un partigiano come presidente, con l'autoradio sempre nella mano destra, un canarino sopra la finestra. Buongiorno Italia con i tuoi artisti, con troppa America sui manifesti, con le canzoni, con amore, con il cuore.
How do I see illness as a process, and how do I not become resentful and fearful and resistant to it? So illness is a process. Illness is a process whereby you get to exercise your freedom to take action, the kind of action that would allow you to heal from this illness. And an illness is a process which will, once you conquer it, make you mentally stronger, emotionally stronger, physically stronger, because your body will rebuild itself after the illness stronger than it was before. That's the way that our immunity works. That's the way that our bodies work. And so you will have the potential not only to enjoy a healthier life and potentially a longer life and a better quality of life, but you will also be reconnected to the things that really matter to you, to your truth, to your essence, to who you are. You will reevaluate a lot of things that other people who are going through different stages in life will not have had the opportunity to reevaluate. You will have gained a new mastery and a new level of perspective. And it's also important to remember what is an illness effectively. An illness is a knock on the door which says, hey, you had a mental conflict and you repressed, suppressed, and ignored that mental conflict. That mental conflict then went ahead and it became an emotional conflict, and you repressed, suppressed, and ignored that emotional conflict. And right now, it is calling, it is knocking on your door, it's becoming physical so that you can't ignore it. It wants you to look at it, to shed light at it, to release it without falling victim to it, to identify these changes that you need to make, whether they're emotional, whether they're lifestyle changes, whether it's a situation that you need to change. But it's calling you to action or to transcendence of these emotions, of this perspective that you have assumed in favor of a different perspective. It's one of these things where once you realize what the emotional conflict is, you either resolve that conflict or you change your perspective in order to be able to live with what should no longer be a conflict because you cannot resolve it. And this is definitely not the case for you, but also you have to keep in mind that sometimes the body can use illness as an attack. It can say, there's this person, there's this situation, it's really bothering me, but you're not doing anything about it. So I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to attack that person by ways of showing them how much they have hurt me. I'm going to attack this situation by showing the extent to which it is unacceptable to me. And again, not your case, but for people who choose to increase the likelihood as a soul that they will end up transitioning through an illness, usually one of two things is taking place. One thing that can be taking place is that they say, I want a little bit of time when I know that my stay in this body is limited, so that I can give love to the people that I want to give that love to, so that I can put things in order, so that I can receive a lot more love than I otherwise would, and so that I can potentially heal some of my values and my priorities for my transgenerational tree before I transition. And another thing that can be taking place is that the soul has decided that it has learned and taught the lessons that it came to learn and teach, and it's done. It wouldn't be productive for it to stay for a lot more time in the body. So the soul wants to transition, but the mind-body is in resistance because the mind-body thinks there's nothing after this. It's scared. So it resists, and a transition that could happen in a matter of seconds, minutes, or days then ends up taking a form of prolonged illness because there's this war going on. The soul says, let's go, and the body-mind says, no, I'm scared. The ego wants to stay. So it's a process, and you're not a victim of it. You are the master of it. You're the director of it. And it's even an opportunity for you to end up being much stronger towards the end. I have recently changed jobs, and at my new jobs, I've been paired up with a teammate that disregards my opinions, doesn't give me credit for my ideas, and doesn't appreciate my presence in the company. They've been with the company for a while, and they have friends there. What should I do, and how do I see this as a process? All right, so this is new. It's always difficult when you're trying to integrate into a new environment. There's always going to be challenges. You can't go in and assume that you're just going to get along with everybody and that everybody is going to like you. And you have to remember this. Are you in the same position as this colleague? Can you honestly look at the situation and say, I am more valuable to this company and I am more valuable to my superiors than this other person is? Because if you can honestly say that, then you can use force to take them down. You can take this issue, if you have any kind of evidence or proof, to your superiors. You can take it to human resources. You can raise your concerns and see if other people experience something similar. But if you don't, if you haven't established your value with your company well enough yet, then you have to use cunning. You have to ask yourself, why is this person, when I'm giving them great ideas, when I'm giving them wonderful insight, why are they disregarding it? Is it just the fact that they're used to being top-notch, they're used to relying only on themselves and having all the great ideas, and maybe with time I can polish away that kind of behavior by showing them that I'm valuable? But more likely than not, what is actually happening is that they are seeing your value. They are seeing more value in you than the people who are willing to be your friends, and they feel competitive because of that, because they feel threatened by you. And if that is the case, you have to remember that one of the rules of power is you cannot outshine the master, not even to impress the master. And while it seems to you that both of you are enjoying the same kind of position in the company and therefore they cannot be your master, if they are more valuable because they have been there for a longer period of time, because they have friends, because they have established themselves as an authority in that kind of setting and you haven't, then you have to understand they are the master at this moment in time, and you have to use cunning. Cunning is not going to give your ego the instant gratification of setting things right and of establishing your value. It's not something that you can go around the company proclaiming to people and letting them know that you're using. It has to be enough for you to know that you are staying true to yourself. You're just using cunning because you're clever. You're not one of these people that goes in and says, my way or the highway. I'm going to drop this job that I've been dreaming about so that I can have justice and gratification, instant gratification in the moment. I can play the longer con. I can have larger time horizons. I can realize that this situation is a process, and this person that I'm resenting right now, I can learn from them. I can learn how they've established these friendships. I can learn how they prove their value in the eyes of our superiors. I can imitate these methods, and I have to remember that when I'm with them in any kind of situation where they have power over me, I must, for now, stand in the shadow. Because the two sources of power are force and cunning. And unless I see that this person is on the decline, they're less valuable than I am, and this has been established, I have very strong evidence they're on their way out and they're on their way down, in which case I know I can win a direct battle against them. Then I can use force. But if I feel like I'm not in a position to do that, I have to use cunning, and I have to wait in the future for that moment when I am stronger and they are weaker to use the force. Or if they continue becoming stronger, then I have to wait in the future for that moment where I've proven myself as a non-threatening, valuable asset to them, and on their way up, they take me up with them. Deny your ego the instant gratification and know that you are clever enough and you have the emotional mastery that is necessary to play the bigger game. I have a friend that has been going through a rough patch for some time, and they're doing so in their personal relationships and at work and with money, and right now I'm doing well and they're very jealous. And how do I see this as a process? Alright, so any relationship is a process. In every new relationship, you're going to not always be enjoying equality and sameness. You're going to have experiences which elevate one of you. You're going to have other experiences which bring down another one of you. And whether or not you maintain this friendship is a test, and sometimes you're supposed to let go, and sometimes you're supposed to hold on. So the first thing that I would caution you against is no longer seeing your friend as somebody who is equal to you. You're right now in a position where you can help them. You're right now in a position where you can elevate them. But you have to ask yourself, based on what merit. Because even though they're going through a rough patch, the kind of help and elevation that you give them has to be deserved. You have to look at their abilities, you have to look at their skills, and you have to say, I want this thing that I can see that even during this tough time you can still bring to the table for me, and I would really appreciate it if you did. And this way your friend feels like they shouldn't resent you for thinking that you're all that, like you're better than them. You are somebody who will never fail to unconditionally love them and to see them as valuable and to see them as equal. But that being said, there is a possibility that your friend will resist, that your friend will sabotage, that your friend will not want to allow you to help them and will continue to resent you. They will want to maintain the slower state, the slower vibration they've been in. And in that case, you have to be very careful in the long run to watch for who applauds when you win. Because a person who you choose to be helping but still doesn't applaud you when you win, that's not a friend. And sometimes you have to put yourself in first position. You have to make sure not to abandon yourself first, even before you help a friend. And you have to be willing to let people go. All right?